Unquestionably. One of the things I would lecture to a lot of assistant chiefs and higher at big incidents, and I would, as the commander of emergency operation, I was bound by city charter to respond to all major emergencies anytime we have over 15 companies working in the city of LA. But arguably, I get in late. By the time they wake me up at my house in Redondo Beach and I drive into LA with my department car, a lot of stuff has already been done. And what I would do is I would step back and watch. And if I didn't have to take command, I didn't have to, but I would kind of look back and try to make some decisions on what's happening. And I would query these assistant chiefs and deputy chiefs, say, what do we have going on here? And I would caution them over and over again, you're too wound around the tactical axle. I need you to understand, to be looking out. I need you to have that 20,000 foot view. But when I say that, sometimes it would be misconstrued as that no one should be around the tactical axle.
Right.
And that's the farthest thing from the truth. We
absolutely
need those captains to be wound around tactic because that's what they're doing. But they need somebody, and they don't need someone to follow them around that same axle. They need someone to elevate themselves a little bit more and look at the incident, the totality, and make sure everything is being done correctly. And that might, like you say, it might be a decision to pull people out. It might be a decision to realize a tactical opportunity and to be more aggressive than go on and get something done. But it's a fascinating, complex thing, the command system. And it's dependent. It's so different depending. I come from a department that had 1,000 people in the street every day, and we could bring almost all of them to the same incident. We did sometimes, and that's a bit extreme, but it's kind of funny because when you are resource rich, you frequently, those great fireground captains frequently will make decisions independently at an incident that make those commanders look good.
Exactly.
They do. I'm sure that when I was running fires at BC, some of those great captains in South LA says, Joe seems to be struggling out there at the command post. I'm just going to go ahead and take this line to this door and put the fire out. And then people are patting me on the back later. Nevertheless, the goal was always, for me as a chief officer, as it related to the ICS system, was to, when I rolled on scene and I took command of that incident, for them to breathe a sigh of relief that I was there to help, not to intrude, not to legislate, even though we did have to fix things and right the ship frequently. But nevertheless, I wanted them to have the same feeling that I had as a young captain when we heard Chief Anthony get on scene, which is, hey, the man's there. He's looking out for us. He's making great decisions. And it's going to be nothing but good that he's here, rather than, we know that it happens frequently in the country. Oh no, we got Chief Smith here,
Chief
and he's going to start screwing everything.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Chaos. That's great. As you were talking about that captain, it makes you look good. I was a young incident commander in my first year, and I had a car wash fire in the middle of the night. And one of the captains on the rescue company, which was newly formed, and that role of that company was to kind of not freelance, but had the freedom to roam throughout the incident and plug holes and look for tactical opportunities and execute at will, within reason and within accountability of either the division or group that they're working in or the incident commander. And I was ready to pull the pin on this car wash fire. Look, it's 3 a.m. It's clearly unoccupied. We've searched it. It's into the structural members. It's not looking good. We're not making headway. And Brian Rice, who was the captain of Rescue 21, who then became a battalion chief, operations chief, and is now the president of the California Professional Firefighters. He was the captain on Rescue 21 that night, and I was the incident commander. And I was ready to pull the pin. And he goes, I see a firewall in here. I see a firewall in here, and I think we can hold it here. We won't go into the defensive space where the roof's probably going to come in, but we can hold the line here and save this attached smog shop, the whole mechanical back end of the car wash, and the office space above. And I went, great, fantastic. And that's where one of those pivotal moments as a young incident commander, I think it was in 2005, when I learned, oh my God, with the right people, with the right training in the right place, you can really impact the outcome of an incident at the tactical level. Like you said, in the tactical space. I call it the tactical gap between the workers on the hose line who's got smoke in his face and the incident commander outside having bonbons and sipping mint juleps at the command post. There's that space where the battle is really won or lost. And when Brian identified the firewall and the tactical opportunity, I said, sounds great, man. We didn't go defensive. We went into what I called a combination strategy. Hey, stay out of this area, but we're gonna be offensive in this area. So this area is offensive, this area is defensive, and I have some great footage of that fire where you see simultaneously elevated master streams coming into the defensive side of the facility, and offensive 2.5 shooting out the top from the offensive side where he was holding the line. And he assured me, hey, we're not in danger. We're in the mouth of a hallway. We're okay. And that decision saved a multi-million-dollar facility and that business. It was remarkable.
You know, a lot of time as commanders or fire officers, we want a clear line drawn in the sand for all decisions. Yeah. And remember when the department that first developed a risk profile in the wake of firefighter Tarver's death in Phoenix was Phoenix. And one of the things they did, which your initial blush, and I don't blame them at all, was they made it mandatory for a captain to declare offensive or defensive right at the site. Right. You know, this is an offensive or defensive fire. And there was in that period, a clear line drawn in the sand. Defensive fire, we're staying outside. Offensive, we're going inside. Well, as you just demonstrated, there is no clear line in the sand. There sometimes is ones that were a little bit defensive and a little bit offensive. Sometimes ones that were offensive, you know, so there, and I always refer to commanders, the people out there at the suburban, the ICP that don't have a face piece on. They're not worried about the rookie. They're not worried about rig placement, and having the courage to either listen to those fireground commanders, and you're still accountable whether you tell them, hey, I agree with you, stay in there. Yeah, if something goes wrong, you're gonna live with that. But having the courage to listen and to either, you know, based on a number of different inputs that you had, your relationship with this great fireground captain,
trust.
The information he fed you, was that matching what you were seeing and hearing? Did it sound logical? And you had the courage to then let him do kind of a hybrid combination of the strategy. Or also, it takes courage to I hear what you're saying, but I'm telling you, it's not matching up with what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and I've had both of those but it does take courage for that commander to. But again, if the big thing is, if you have some type of a system, which I had a system for every time our dispatch center notified us that we had 10 minutes on the incident clock, 20 minutes on the incident clock. And I remember when I first started as a deputy chief, and I would watch the commanders that were running the incident behind the Suburban, when they would receive that message from the dispatch center, hey, you got 20 minutes on the incident clock, and they would just pick up the mic and say, Roger, put the mic back down. Yeah. And I would say later on, I would ask them, you know, what went through your mind when you heard that? Well, you know, and they couldn't, going on. They couldn't quantify. Yeah. And I would say, do you know why they're telling you that? Because it's still about the time temp curve. They're telling you that thing has been burning for 20 minutes. And realistically, I would like you to step back, and I would like you to evaluate 5 or 6 things to determine if your situational awareness is still accurate. Do you need to develop an alternative strategy? And for me, I just developed a quick thing, you know, first of all, is the fire bigger or the incident worse than when I first got there? Do I have all resources reconciled? Do I have a communication plan? Do I have a way to talk to everybody? And I went through 4 or 5 different things that would allow me to say, you know what, I got 20 minutes on the clock, but I'm still good with this strategy. Or if I, you know, those things that I talk about, they paint a red stripe on your rear end. And it's like you mentioned, you know, the if you don't have resources reconciled and you don't have a good communication plan, and this thing is bigger than when you first got there, and it's been burning for 20 minutes, you had better have an answer to what you need to do to fix that. That's what you get paid to do. Otherwise, if you can't do that, if you can't make a decision and make a judgment call, you might as well just kind of leave the incident command post, throw on your turnout coat, and go in there and mix it up on the roof or inside.
Put your hands on a hose line.
The value that you have.
Yeah, it's being a task level worker. You're not doing your job. And that's, only up until the past 10 years, I would say, maybe 15, has the America, the nation, really elevated the importance of training for incident commanders, besides just, get your cert, get your ICS 1, 2, 3, but actually realistic training. And a lot of it's been simulations. But now with our program, we're doing hands-on incident command training. They are at the back of the buggy. There is smoke pouring out of the building. It's theatrical because we don't want to have unnecessary risk with carcinogens. But the smoke provides the fog of war needed. Everyone's in full PPE with SCBA. They're talking to rails. They're pulling hose lines. Their saws revving. And that adds that extra element of reality and realism so that when we do hit them with a 10-minute par clock or a 20-minute par clock, they're already here like they would be. And if they ignore it, it's because they haven't been trained. And to them, that par clock notification is white noise. It's just another thing I got to deal with. I don't want to deal with it. Instead of seeing it for the tool that it is. And then doing a training timeout. In the midst of those scenarios, there's crews inside doing searches. They're finding mannequins. They're pulling hose lines. And then we say timeout on the radio and everyone stops. And then we ask the incident commander, why did you ignore the par clock just now? What is your span? Who's on division alpha? What do you see? Are you still in the right strategy? Is this still a life-saving priority right now? Or are we in incident stabilization? Okay. Do you have adequate resources? Do you have them assigned appropriately? Do you remember who you have in staging right now? And they look at you with these eyes like this because it's not a simulation in a classroom. It's a realistic training scenario.
Yeah.
And it's really awesome to watch them evolve quickly.
No doubt. The kind of the national advent of people building up the mock Suburbans, the back of the incident command post, and then having a very educated and astute green cell that throws those injects at them in real time, and then combining that with developing simulations that teach that judgment, that those injects come at a time and in a manner that's going to add stress to the situation. And it's an invaluable experience. It's a no-fault environment. The only people that die are those, people on the screen. And the other thing, too, is that the person that's in the hot seat or the multiple people that are in a hot seat are learning a lot, but people that are sitting back and watching are learning just as much. And in the advent of declining amount of structure fires across the country, that is the way to gain those sets and reps to become effective and to become an operator or a commander that's has that like trip hammer level of efficiency that those great commanders all seem to have.
I think the combination of that kind of training and then again, literally outside hands-on smoke machines in your face, air breathing, engines pumping is the next level. And then also realizing that the modern incident commander should take a mission command approach or a decentralized approach like the military. The military doesn't have a general running a battle. They have a lieutenant colonel running the battle and segments of the battle while they're back at the command post, which may be miles away. So the military says, look, we're going to have, and they use the term subordinate leaders. I never like the word subordinate for anything, but they're going to have leaders in what basically is the tactical space, taking those chunks of the incident, the third floor, the Charlie side, the roof, the RIC component, the medical component, and say, look, you are tactical. I need you to step back from the work. If you're the roof division on a structure fire and you have even just your own truck company, you can have your head in that hole. You need to step back with your radio in one hand and looking at maybe with a tick camera or at least looking at the big picture, accounting for your crews, seeing what the smoke's doing, seeing what the crews are doing beneath you, listening to what the radio's got going on. And that's in the next, that tactical next. But like many truck officers, we all like having our hands on the tools. And so there's that evolution that all truck officers must go through where they have to be tactical. And The hard part is when you take a department where the staffing isn't adequate. It's 2-0 staffing, 3-0 staffing. It's really hard for that officer to step back and be tactical because they have to put their hands on the tools just to stretch the initial hose line, for example. So they are head down in the task level. That's why maybe the next company or the third company, an officer becomes division alpha with those crews working for him or her early on, not waiting for the chief who's still 10 minutes out, the second chief who's 10 minutes out. But hey, let's get this thing, let's stay ahead of the curve on this, fellas, because it looks good now, but to your point, what's it going to look like in 10 minutes from now? And that's a big piece of it. As you're talking about the science and art of incident command, I kind of look at ICS as the ability to read music. You could read music, and if somebody reads music, it doesn't matter what they're reading. It's to them, they see the notes and they understand it. But the ability that doesn't mean you can play the piano. You have to learn how to play the piano or the tuba or the trumpet, the guitar or the violin. And the incident commander has to not only read music, you have to run those different parts of the orchestra, the strings, the horns, the piano, percussion, and bring them all together. It doesn't mean you have to go out and blow the horn. You have to go out and play the violin, but you better know how to read music and how to bring it all together. Whereas the tactical leaders need to know how to play the violin, and they need to know when things are out of tune and they're not in tune and we're not at the right tempo. We're not on the same sheet of music that we should be. And so I think that's the extra added element that ICS doesn't provide. It teaches you how to read music, but doesn't teach you how to play the instrument. Each instrument is different. An engine's different than a truck. Strings are different than winds. And so that's, I think, the nuance that people realize. So understandably, historically, like you said, when people who don't understand the incident command system enough and only emphasize its limitations, it's too big, it doesn't solve problems, it's not agile, it doesn't really have tactics and strategy, entwine. That's where our training comes in. Where realistic training, the green cell stuff comes in, where you overlay and you start playing music together, and you realize, what, this house fire, we've played this song before. Okay, does it mean it's going to be exactly the same? No. Does it mean that should we still plan for contingencies and unknowns? Absolutely. But we have played this song before, and so that's the predictability through training and the application of ICS, the use of resources, the typical tactics that'll be applied, whether it's VES or vertical burn or what have you. That's where our ability to remain ahead of the incident comes in. Those things combined create that efficiency that you spoke about when we started the show, of that efficiency. Can we do it in a timely fashion to execute the mission successfully or not? Are we going to save them, or are we going to get hurt ourselves? Those are the two poles, right? Are we going to do it fast enough and smart enough to get them out? Or are we going to do it slow enough and stupid enough to get us hurt? And that's kind of the sliding scale. So this stuff, I could talk about this all day. I don't want to take any more of your time. You have your brand new, beautiful grandson with you. But anything to close us with, Chief? I mean, we could sit at your feet all day and listen to the wisdom come off of your lips. But
well, you really hit the nail on the head. That ICS is a system of incident management. It does not compensate for rudimentary firefighting skills. It's still about those firefighters that get to the incident quickly and safely, that lay the lines, that throw the ladders, have the ability to, those great engine captains that have the ability to root out the seat of the fire, those great truck companies that cut the holes, those great search and rescue teams that pull those people out, adherence to personal protective equipment, SCBAs, and having those skills. ICS enhances and complements that, but it does not replace it. You could be the best fireground operator, ICS compliant in the world, but unless those companies are trained, but when you have a trained company that their rudimentary skills, their fundamental firefighting skills are top notch, they have concise standard operating guidelines, those individual companies, and then you enhance that with a great fireground ICS commander, that's how we have those crews that we're so proud of. and that do amazing things at incidents. And ICS certainly doesn't replace that, but in the proper sequence, it is the answer to most of the complex questions and fears we have on the fire ground. So I appreciate you. I love you. You know that. And I'm a big believer in your system and the good that you're doing throughout the country. So it's very much a source of pride to me to be associated with you, Chief. And I appreciate the opportunity for today.
I'm humbled by you saying that. I